Welcome back, Oddcast Podblast episode 3. I'm Jim.
And I'm Chad, and don't forget that hashtag OCPB to find us right there on Facebook where you can drop your stories. Or if you don't have a story, drop a friend's story.
Yeah, I'm sure they would love to share their full name and give
their full
story
name.
out.
If you want to put down their credit card number too, that'd be great. We need a little bit of financing here.
I'm a Persian prince, and I will put $100 million in your bank account. No, I'm just kidding. Don't take that very seriously. I do need $100 million.
Yeah, but he is a Persian prince, I'm sure.
No, definitely not going to put the money in your bank account. But I am a Persian prince. Anyway. We've got a great episode for you today, and I'm sure you're gonna like it. I had a lot of fun really looking up some of the stories and such, and actually, getting some stories from some local historians on a Florida battlefield that has just been turned on to me. I never really heard about this in American history, which is sad. I'm gonna put this out there right now that if you're a teacher and your curriculum does not consist of good American history
or American history, period.
Reevaluate your curriculum and possibly your job.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot to learn about this country. And, if you are a history teacher out there that does teach a lot of American history, good for you. Good for you. I salute you.
That's awesome. Keep passing it on. And also, by the way, July is the month in which this great country did gain its independence. July 1776.
Yeah. July what? 17.
It was, was it the 3rd or the 5th? Oh, was it the 4th? It's like when you ask people when California became a state and they're like, was it 1987?
Yeah. It was funny. I was actually online and there was a meme out there that was like, July 3rd was actually the day that it all happened. The 4th was just the day they read over everything. Yeah. It made it official. Yeah. But yeah, you know what? Just want to salute some veterans out there and, thank you for everything you've done. Thank you for your service. And thank you for allowing us to have the freedom to do this podcast, because without you, we wouldn't be able to spew our BS to everybody.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Thank you all very much. You are very much appreciated. Thank you.
So in today's episode, though, we've got some really cool stuff out there. Like we said, we're going to talk a little bit about haunted battlefields, and some of the battlefields that we're going to be mentioning: Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Also, going to be talking about a Lusty from right here in Florida, which is it's one of the lesser known battles of the Civil War, and they actually do a lot of reenactments. We were actually able to get stories from a local historian who attends the reenactments every year when they do them, and his name is Jeff Grizak. And thank you very much for sharing your stories, but we'll get into those in just a little bit. But you've actually got some stuff on Fort McHenry, which is where they wrote the Star-Spangled Banner.
That is correct. It was, during the War of 1812. The Battle of Fort McHenry was fought on September 13th through the 14th, 1814. That was the year from the War of 1812. That's when it ended. So basically what was going on in this battle, there was each side had some prisoners, and they were talking about doing an exchange. And the fort had some British prisoners, and out on one of the ships, there were some American prisoners. Well, they eventually were able to make negotiations to do a prison swap, or a prisoner swap, excuse me.
Prison swap.
Yeah, a prison swap. So okay, you guys take this and put it on your boat, and just put one of your boats right where that was, and we'll call it good.
We're even.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, but we don't have to clean the poop deck.
No, nobody wants to clean the poop deck.
No, I wouldn't.
So what's bringing up ghost stories when it comes to Fort McHenry for you?
So one of the stories that I was able to find was kind of a testimony from a guy shockingly, from your neck of the woods in the States, New Jersey. Talking about Baltimore, Maryland. So he says, my wife and I were on vacation in Baltimore in August of 2007. We were doing the usual sightseeing and seeing the birthplace of where the country's national anthem took place. And so they took the boat across the harbor and landed on Fort McHenry Island. They went to the main building, saw a 15-minute film about the birth of the nation, and then went outside to tour the soldiers' barracks. That's when things got very strange, he says here. It says they were at the top of where the soldiers used to stand watch while guarding the fort. He got down to tie his shoe, And as he was doing so, he saw a tall, dark figure marching with what looked like a gun on his shoulder, and the path across, he couldn't have been more than 20 feet away, he says right here. He said it was a beautiful, sunny day outside, nothing shadowy, nothing funky, and that would have caused a glare. So he couldn't really make out the facial features of this guy, but he was pretty certain that it was a black man that he saw. So his wife was on the other side of the path and looking in the opposite direction, so she didn't see him. So naturally, she didn't see it. So he got up and he didn't tell her. He just pretended like nothing had happened, and they went on their way. But he never saw the guy again. Anyway, he thought about it the rest of the day, and then a little while later, time went by, and he kind of forgot about it. Well, skipping ahead, so back to his home in New Jersey, in November of that same year, in 2007, he was watching the TV show Haunted History on the History Channel, with the feature that shows Baltimore. He says, I really hadn't thought much about my experience there. We'd been back home, but seeing this reminded me of it. I was compelled to watch it just to see if what I had seen would come up on the show, and sure enough, it did.
Wow, really? So that's like that's a well-known report that they've seen this guy.
I guess, there. Yeah. It. Let me see where it says here. So, it was at the show Fort McHenry, where people have reported seeing what looks like a black soldier in military uniform with a rifle, which is exactly what this guy saw. He said cold chills went down his spine as he was watching it, and he got curious enough. He made plans to go back to Baltimore the next year. Wow. But he made the mistake of telling his wife what he saw at Fort McHenry, and he said they did go back to Baltimore, but did not go back to Fort McHenry because his wife was just a little too scared.
Wow. Like, I mean, yeah, I guess you get frightened by a ghost. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
I mean, you can, because it's like, it's kind of like, being afraid of a lot of things, but it turns out you're just afraid of the unknown. Yeah. And it's like, if you don't know what it is, you don't really know whether to be scared or, but I thought that was very interesting, and a very interesting story of how he saw it. And then on the History Channel, they've had reports of people seeing this exact same figure. And it really wanted me, I really wanted to take the time sometime to dig more into this story, because history itself is great, especially battlefields and just, look at the Civil War. There's a lot out there to look at, but I thought that was just really funny that one guy and then a really big source saw the exact same thing. So it definitely piques your curiosity.
No, that's absolutely a cool thing to run into. I would think, is seeing exactly what you saw is something that isn't very unknown, and people kind of piece the puzzles together.
Like, maybe it's not the mirage I thought it was.
Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it is just a guy shooting a gun in the middle of the day. Who knows? Baltimore's like the Wild West, right? No, Baltimore's beautiful. So, yeah, man, that is a pretty crazy story. If you have a story, share it on our Facebook page at Oddcast Podblast. That's facebook.com/OddcastPodblast. Hashtag OCPB. Now, getting into more of the Civil War, which, that was a very, big time in American history. That was, it was a very bloody war. I mean,
one of the bloodiest, that I think people talk about even in world history. There were more, they say that there were more Americans killed in the American Civil War.
Well, because who else is going to die?
Well, yeah, but what I was going to say to the other is, like, the numbers there combined compared to a lot of other wars in world history. Like, it's one of the bloodiest wars in, world history. Just,
we fought some pretty big wars here,
Yeah.
World wars.
Yeah.
So, getting into the paranormal side of it, there were a couple battlefields that immediately came to mind for me, being up from the Northeast, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania.
You want to know how many soldiers died in the American Civil War?
Absolutely.
620,000.
That's a lot of soldiers, which is very sad. That's way too many. But getting into it, Gettysburg is actually where a lot of those soldiers were lost. It was a 3-day battle in July, right before the 4th, July 1st through the 3rd.
Wow.
And there were a lot of soldiers lost in that battle. And at the end of the battle, it looked like we lost 23,000 Union casualties and 28,000 Confederate casualties, which is insane. But also, one of the main reasons that it's got so much paranormal activity going on there. And I mean, I've seen, various, different shows that have gone to Gettysburg, and it always seems to be a big hotspot. Anybody in the area up north always says when they visit Gettysburg, it's one of those places that as soon as you get to one of the battlefields or one of the places in which, was a place of where a lot of energy was going on at the moment, you just immediately feel it. Like you could almost cut the tension with a knife. But it's located about 3 hours outside of Philadelphia, 2.5 if you're driving pretty steady there. Right. And that's where it all happened as well. So there's a lot going on up in that area. But I mean, just looking back at Gettysburg, like I said, July 1st through the 3rd, 1863, it's considered the most important engagement of the Civil War. This coming from history.com. And, they basically fought in the center of town where, the aftermath of this caused a lot of chaos, which it gets really graphic when you start reading into this. But I mean, there were literally just bodies strewn everywhere, all over the town. I mean, we're talking like mutilated bodies, and it was so hot because it was July, and Pennsylvania summers are not the best.
Yeah, no. And the thing about that is, if you had a gun, it only had one shot, which, I mean, you did have a gun, but so a lot of it, you shot, and then a lot of it just seemed to be fought with, knives, bayonets, rocks, whatever you get your hands on. Like, there was nothing pretty about the way, you had to kill each other. And some of the worst parts is, like, if you go over to, like, actually just everywhere in the Civil War, really, but there's one battle when the Confederates were going to try to take Nashville back, because Nashville was across the river, and that they needed that back. It was a good stronghold. And in one of the battles that happened in that particular area, there were just, people said there was nothing like it, because, I mean, there was a lot of young boys in these battles, 17, 16, 18, and there was just nothing worse than after a huge battle when you've got thousands of bodies laying on the battlefield, and people are wounded and still alive, and there's nothing worse than hearing people, grown men crying for their mothers, because, right. Or like even these kids, like these boys that were like 16, 17, 18, right. And I'm sure there were ones younger, but at that point, it's either me or you. And it's just, I'm sure that.
Yeah. They have no place being in the army, let alone dying at the age of 16, 17 like that. And I mean, nobody does. But one of my favorite quotes actually came off of a site called prairieghost.com. where they're talking about Gettysburg, and the quote was, "Wounded men were brought into our houses and laid side by side in our halls and rooms. Carpets were so saturated with blood as to be unfit for further use. Walls were blood-stained, as well as books that were used as pillows." So this shows how, big of a massacre this was, and how much everybody had to come together and really, help these men who were gonna survive, or at least try to survive, and get them to survive. But it goes on to say the dead also lined the streets and walkways, rotting in the summer sun. Corpses swollen to twice their original size, wrote one federal soldier, and said actually burst asunder. Several human or inhuman corpses sat upright against a fence with arms extended in the air and faces hideous with something very like a fixed leer, which is one of the most disturbing pictures to paint in anybody's mind. Mm-hmm. And that is what they experienced during the Civil War up in Gettysburg. And lots of hot spots up there. One coming from a website called Only in Your State, talking about 8 truly terrifying ghost stories that prove Gettysburg is the most haunted city in Pennsylvania. And we'll start from 8. And just, we'll go back and check out a couple of different ones. Right. But the Dobbin House Tavern at 89 Steinware Avenue in Gettysburg, PA. you can still dine in. And you might be served a side of paranormal, according to this website. Formerly, a stop to the underground. Hey, sir, give me that cocktail with a side of paranormal.
You want to know how we chill the pudding?
So, formerly a stop on the Underground Railroad, the Dobbin House Tavern is host to a bunch of former slave spirits, is what they say. And they've been seen, throughout the building, including former hiding places. Blood splatters, according to local lore, also mysteriously appear and disappear on the floor throughout the tavern. Very, very Amityville Horror-esque, if you will, with the blood stains just appearing on the floor. But I've heard that in a lot of paranormal cases where, you'll get muck or like a blood or like even just like wet, like water, but it's not really water. It's just a liquid.
Like kind of a clear, cloudy liquid.
Yeah, it's like goo, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, definitely a liquid associated with a lot of spirits. I thought was weird. I mean, there's not much else to say about that one.
Yeah, I mean,
but how would you feel like, working at the Dobbin House Tavern and like, opening a door in the basement and all of a sudden there's like just like slave ghosts. You're like, oh my God, there's people hiding in here. Like that, I'd be scared.
That is almost more creepy seeing something hiding than it is when it's just going around doing its thing.
Right.
It's kind of like, like the soldier back in Fort McHenry, he was just going around doing his thing. And then when you got other things that are hiding, it's kind of like, remember the video games you'd play in the arcades or whatever, to where like the zombies would be hiding behind boxes and they'd come out and shoot. It's like,
all of a sudden there's like an arm.
Yeah, that's exactly what that reminds me of.
Another one, the Tilly Pierce House Inn at 301 Baltimore Street in Gettysburg. People are often telling stories of waking up in their room after feeling a figure sitting on the edge of their bed staring at them. There's nothing more uncomfortable than having that feeling of somebody just watching you.
Oh, yeah. You're walking around. It's like in the forest. You're like, I know. Is that like, you always feel like a bear's watching you or something?
Yeah. I don't know about a bear. Is there a bear watching me? But other people tell of hearing strange noises and footsteps from an empty attic. And of course, the apparitions of soldiers have been seen wandering the halls of the Tilly Pierce House Inn as well. You've got the Farnsworth House Inns with a lot of the same stuff at 401 Baltimore Street in Gettysburg. Gettysburg College is actually said to be haunted as well because it was used as a field hospital.
Yep.
And that was for both sides during the Civil War. And as a result, has tons of stories for hauntings. Although it goes on to say on this website, onlyinyourstate.com, that one of the most terrifying stories dates back to the early 20th century where two college employees entered an elevator, pushed the button for the floor they wanted to go to, but the elevator malfunctioned, taking them straight to the basement.
I had a feeling it was going there. I was like, no.
Oh my God, like I just got chills, okay? So when the elevator doors opened, okay, there was a bloody Civil War operating room with doctors working feverishly to save injured and dying soldiers. As a doctor walked toward them, the elevator began to move to another floor. The two employees, accompanied by a security guard, returned to the basement minutes later to find absolutely nothing.
Holy crap.
Which that sounds like something straight out of a horror movie. And I mean, like that just doesn't usually happen.
No, not generally, no. But it's funny. It's funny that you say that because there are places that you can even still visit today. And, this is probably not necessarily as paranormal as it is just science. But if you visit a lot of these places like that they use for hospitals, especially large southern mansions, they had a floor or two. They were large. They could house, multiple wounded soldiers during battles. And to this day, like if you go in and tour them, people that are in like the medical field or in the military can still smell the blood.
Well, and going back too, I mean, to like what we've talked about in previous episodes and other stuff, but I mean, the amount of energy going on in a place like that could absolutely, I mean,
it could create a hot spot. I mean, essentially,
creating that like situation, that scenario over and over again. I mean, in episode 2, I put out my theory of like kind of like how it's like magnetically recorded to that particular place. And I mean, when you're supporting both sides of the military in that particular building, you're looking at not only the stress of trying to keep your soldiers alive, but the stress of people that you don't necessarily want to keep alive, but are being told you have to. And, you're trying to save a human life. Not only that, but we're all fighting over, the same land. You know what I mean? So it had to have been a high pressure situation that probably caused a lot of negative energy.
Oh yeah, and it also it'd be one thing that a lot of people always forget is there are I mean it's really funny, but even there are things that can chemically affect the spirit, the emotions, all of that stuff. And when you go through something, I mean, I don't even want to say, I guess it would be traumatizing. It would probably be very traumatizing, but you just have to be tough and go on. But at the same time, yeah, it does. It puts a lot of stress on the spirit of a person in that situation, to where I could definitely see that your theory could add up.
If it's emotionally and energetically charged to the point where
it's a possibility that something could happen for it to get stuck there. Earlier I said hot spot, but I think when you talk about paranormal, I think we mean a cold spot.
No, did it? So anyway, moving on. That was the Gettysburg College. 4 on this list from Only in Your State. The Gettysburg Hotel, which several spirits continue to roam the hotel because once again was a hospital during the Civil War. And I want to say that I watched an episode of, I believe it was Ghost Hunters on Sci-Fi, and they went and they did the Gettysburg Hotel, which I mean it's just a very famous place to investigate when it comes to the paranormal. And a nurse, actually, during the bloody days of the Battle of Gettysburg, has been known to wander the rooms, digging through guests' drawers and luggage and pushing carts haphazardly around the hotel.
Pushing carts?
Carts, yeah, pushing carts.
Wow.
Like, I don't know, when you start to move things as a ghost, that's when I start to get a little bit freaked out, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want anything slung at me or thrown at me from across the room when I'm the only person in it.
Well, you remember that one story I told you about, the guy got slapped?
Yeah, guy got slapped. That's crazier because there's no hand that could have slapped him.
Yeah.
Anyway, and also at the Gettysburg Hotel, a Union soldier who perished in the hospital is often seen wandering the hotel's hall. Number 3 on this list is the Sachs-covered bridge on Waterworks Road in Gettysburg.
Okay, I've heard about this one.
Bridges creep me out ever since the story of Sleepy Hollow. But this one is over in Pennsylvania, one of the most haunted hot spots in Gettysburg, crossed by the retreating Confederate army. The bridge is also said to be the site of the public hanging of 3 army deserters. Those who visit the bridge tell stories of seeing apparitions, smelling cigar smoke, hearing voices, and feeling a touch when no one is there.
Oh, lovely.
And that, that's creepy because once again, outside, but I mean, a lot of this is going to be outside because, I mean, it was a battlefield. So
yeah, there's not a ton of inside.
Yeah, no, not too much.
But then, of course, that bridge has a top on it, so bam, you just have a little bit of inside.
Yep.
What is it with ghosts and especially like tall buildings?
Tall buildings and ghosts?
Buildings, or just like, because like whenever you see a ghost, it maybe not, or like top floors, I guess is a better word, because it's like, oh, there's a ghost and he's in the attic. Or
it's just a creepy place.
They're either in the attic or the basement.
I don't know. I just feel like you associate it with a creepy place. You know what I mean? I mean, nobody really wants to go in the attic. I mean, I know I never want to go in the attic because that means I'm doing work.
Yeah.
And I don't want to work in the attic. If I'm going into the basement, I want it to be daytime.
Yeah.
Because 1, it's underground, and 2, it's just dark. It's dreary. It's usually a little bit wet. I mean, like nobody ever had like a really dry basement.
It's like in Home Alone, how when Kevin, every time he goes downstairs, that's what it's like for everybody.
No, but I mean, any basement that I've ever been in, unless it's like fully done. Yeah, it's always got
it's an unfinished basement.
Yeah,
there's something about an unfinished basement
it's just dreary and creepy. But I think that's why a lot of people associate ghosts with those. Plus, I mean, you also have to think too. If you look at like guys like John Zappis, who is a paranormal investigator, he had a show a little while back about just haunted items. Whenever you're going to store something or put anything anywhere, where are you putting it? You're putting it either in the basement, the attic, or the garage. You know what I mean? And I mean, you usually hear about these things because that's where a lot of this older stuff is stored, I think, you know?
And then also that, you know, you talk about the old stuff and it goes, I mean, that goes back to stuff that a person may have been not even emotionally, but it seems like more spiritually, it's like sentimental. It's like when something is sentimental, it's more than just, oh, that means so much to me. It's deeper than just, oh, you know, I love that thing. I'm going to remember it forever. It's like something that made a piece of you or helped make you. And it's like, you have a little bit of, you know, you have like a spiritual attachment to it.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many attachments to things like that. I mean, you have to really get to the core of what that item is and who that item was owned by. I mean, you could look at, like, say, a doll or a toy from a child. You know? I mean,
that's always the worst one.
It could have been given to them by their parent that maybe passed away, went off to war, especially in times like that. You know, even in today's, I mean, you know, this time period, people are still going off to war. They're going off to these other countries to work. And I mean, if you're given something as a child, and I'm using a child as an example because it's the best one that I can think of right now, but you're going to hold on to that forever. You're not going to give up this item in which, you know, a loved one gave you, and that is literally your last attachment to that person.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's one, you know, scenario. Or it could have been like, I mean, heck, if you were a very greedy person in life and you were just, you know, always about money, this, money, that, you were probably a very, you know, materialistic person.
Oh yeah, there you
know what I mean? Where if you had, I don't know, maybe jewelry or something, that's what you're going to be attached to. And if you passed away say in your home, you know, and all your jewelry was in a jewelry box, that's what you're going to go looking for in the afterlife, maybe. Or you had so much attachment to that jewelry and whatever the item may be, that if anybody else in another life has it in front of them and it was just bought with their home or
and
something
it was
like that,
yours, and you don't want anybody else to have
exactly. You're going to go straight for that. And that may be how, you know, we get people who say they were spiritually attacked or something like that. There's so many different theories and ways as to why an attic or a basement is creepy and haunted. And, you know, even when you get into the materialistic items being haunted, you can break it down into so many different groups, and we'll have to talk about that more in depth at a later time, and finish up this list of top 8 haunted places in Gettysburg.
Oh yes, yeah.
From only in your
state.
This is
getting good.
Yeah, so we got number 2, the Jenny Wade House. Now, have you ever heard of the Jenny Wade House?
I have not heard of the Jenny Wade House.
Well, the Jenny Wade House is the site of a lone civilian death during the Battle of Gettysburg. Now, this is a crazy story, okay? So Jenny Wade, who lived in the home, was actually hit by a stray bullet.
Oh.
Okay. Now, the bullet hit her while she was baking in her kitchen. She died on the battle's final day. So it was like, you know, we're in the home stretch, and this happened. She said to still roam the house along with several children, and visitors often hear loud bangs in the innocent voice of a young child and feel sudden rushes of cold air.
I didn't do it.
Right, when on the second floor of the house, others tell of feeling the arms of the little children holding onto their legs, which is possibly the most creepy thing that I've ever heard. But
The Shining all over it.
Jenny Wade, though, I mean that's a very famous story from this, because she was a civilian death, and she was hit while baking in the safety of her own home, and the bullet marks were actually still there, I believe. If you were to go to the Jenny Wade House, you could see
they've left it as
they've
is.
been preserved, and you could see where this all happened.
Man,
and that alone, I mean, keeping that would I would think keep an energy within a house like as something like that. I mean, that's pretty big deal. It's an innocent bystander, you know, being
that
shot
almost
down.
seems like an injustice, like an injustice accidental death or something. That's just going back. Just a number of possibilities
absolutely
why. But that is interesting. So what you got there for number one? What's the number one you got for the Battle of Gettysburg?
So the number one was Devil's Den at Sickles Avenue in Gettysburg, PA. Basically, when you go there, this is the main stage for the Battle of Gettysburg. And so when you go there, of course, you're going to run into the people who are going to help you out, take pictures of the places that you want to go to. But they said that there's one particular guy who will show up, and he's wearing a large floppy hat. He will help tourists, compose the perfect shot of the battlefield, even when stepping in the frame for a photograph or two. But then as soon as the shutter snaps, he disappears and never appears in the photos. Yep.
Man.
So don't be surprised if that were to happen to you visiting the Devil's Den. However, if your camera or smartphone was to stop working or the fully charged batteries suddenly were to drain, that's a pretty common occurrence at the Devil's Den. And you know what? It's probably like that too, because they say, and by they, I mean, your general people who are speaking about ghost hunting and, all that jazz. They always say that the ghosts try to manifest themselves and they have to draw some sort of energy, whether they're drawing your personal energy as a human being or drawing that of an electronic device. And in most paranormal cases where somebody's trying to investigate, batteries get drained from cameras, batteries get drained from lights. It's a very common thing, and things start to malfunction because that's what they're saying. I mean, could it all be very, just a thing that just happened? It's not something that you could chalk up to being paranormal. Yes, but very unlikely, since it's such a common occurrence when you talk about paranormal investigations and such.
Oh yeah, and if you go to a hotspot, it is tech and it's gonna fail. But yeah, and you hear a lot of people talking about that. We were looking, and all of a sudden our gear started to malfunction, or I started to feel sick, and I've heard that one quite a bit too, of people feeling sick, especially to the stomach.
Yeah, that is.
And if you think about it, the stomach, since we're talking about, the drawing of energy from places with like paranormal hotspots, is the stomach is the place that supplies a lot of the energy to the body.
Yeah, and the other thing too, if you were to go into a different religion or anything like that, and look at like very spiritualistically, like Buddhism and stuff like that, and they speak about chakras, and you've got, I think it's 4 or 5 chakras. I'm not 100% on this because it's just coming up right now.
I thought there was like 7.
No, but straight down the center of your body.
Oh, straight down the center. Yeah.
So it starts to your head, goes all the way down to the bottom. So looking at that, that's another way to look at spiritualism and talk about energy. You know what I mean?
I like how you said that and it just thundered outside.
Yeah, it's pretty creepy. But we're going to chalk that up to Florida. Like we said, everything dies in Florida, including us while we do a podcast in a thunderstorm.
But don't worry, after we go, we're very sentimental about this show. So you'll be hearing more from us in the weeks to come, if in case we do die.
Mysteriously, these 2 idiots from the dead upload podcasts to YouTube.
Now that'd be a story.
I don't know how you'd explain it, except they're not dead. They're hanging out with Tupac and Biggie.
Like, I'm Jad and I'm Chin. Or
Jad and Chin. But anyway, getting back to the stories, Gettysburg has got to be one of the number 1 hotspots for paranormal activity after the Civil War. And you can go anywhere on the internet and find stories about Gettysburg. And if you have any, please share them with us. Oddcast Podblast on Facebook. That's facebook.com/oddcastpodblast, #OCPB. Now, we were able to reach out to a local historian by the name of Jeff Grieslak, and he sent me over a couple stories. He was not able to get on with us because he did have a very busy schedule today.
Yeah.
But he was able to send over quite the blurb about some experiences that he's personally had. And the one that I want to share, he sent me an email back saying, "Hey, I've been reenacting for over 42 years and have attended every single Olusty reenactment." Now, Olusty, for those who aren't familiar with it, is in Sanderson, Florida. And this battle was fought on February 20th of 1864. And it was the only large-scale battle that took place in Florida, where the Union General Truman Seymour and his troops were first in Jacksonville, attempting to cut off food supplies headed for the Confederate Army. So, this is a pretty big battle. And even with the experienced soldiers on both sides, the violence and bloodshed of the battle was quite a shock to those who survived. And the Civil War would actually end the following year in 1865. And this was fought, like I said, in Sanderson, Florida when it happened. And there's a reenactment every year in Olusty. Okay.
We got to go to that.
Yeah, it'd be pretty cool. So it's about, if you're in Orlando or in the Orlando area, Kissimmee area, Olusty is about 3 hours, 2.5 hours north up by Jacksonville.
Yeah, you're almost at the state line up there. It's not.
It's pretty far up.
Maybe
there.
about a I don't know, maybe a half hour away from the state line at the top there. So you're getting pretty close.
Yeah. So that gives you a good idea of where this was fought. Like I said, right outside of Jacksonville, Florida, is pretty much where this is. But they do have a battlefield that you can visit and go check out, which actually, they do say that there is some paranormal activity going on over there. And on February 15th, actually, this is according to backpackverse.com, February 15th, 2014, a reenactment took place to commemorate the 150th anniversary of the Battle of Olusty, and thousands of people came to honor the troops and that historic day at Olusty Battlefield, Historic State Park. And everybody has seen orbs there. There's photographs that are on here of orbs, hanging around a tree. And, I'm going to put it out there. I am a believer in the paranormal. I am a believer of ghosts and spirits and such. But orbs, I mean, as much of a big deal as that really is, it doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, it seems a little...
I mean, yes, if you see one that's, kind of just on video, just going its own path and really doing its own thing, I guess that's a little bit more compelling. But even so, I mean, when you see things like around a tree or outside or even in like a dusty old theater or something, I always kind of chalked it up to dust or bugs. But I mean, some of them, yeah, you're going to look at things, but I feel like moisture gets picked up in cameras a lot more often, probably gets written off as orbs as well. But as they go on with some of these experiences, another quote from backpackverse.com, the reenactment was well underway, and I was instructed to migrate towards Ocean Pond. I was ambushed and fake shot to death by a Confederate soldier on a horse. I remember falling down, relieved to be off my feet for a while. This is from one of the reenactors. He says, "I shut my eyes as I lay there, and I just concentrated on listening to the horses galloping around me. Everywhere was organized chaos. But that's when I started to pick up on sounds that I shouldn't have heard." So this is happening during the reenactment. And these guys do this every year, so they really know what is going on. And I said, "I could hear whimpers and the sound of men in pain. Normally, that's not the kind of thing we reenact, because everyone must carefully listen for instructions and observe the historical integrity of the battle."
And that takes a lot of energy to be in pain, just laying there going, or yelling. Or like...
But nevertheless, I heard deep moans nearby, and then the sound of frantic rustling. Lifted my head just slightly, but nobody had been killed close to me, which is kind of weird. So he's the only one laying around that's, within an earshot. And I'm not sure what compelled me, but I called out hello to the air above my head. Out of nowhere, a silhouette hovered over me, wearing a dark gray wool of a Confederate major general. The only problem was, and he whispered, this guy's name is John, that I could see right through his body, straight into the sun. It was such a surreal experience. I just laid there gaping at the man and like a fish out of water. "John, wake up, John," I heard moments later. Opened my eyes to a handful of Confederate and Union soldiers looking down at me. At this time, I could not see through them. They told me that I was dehydrated and I likely passed out. Now, he goes on to say, I'm not sure what I saw that day in Sanderson, but I refuse to dismiss the idea that a real Confederate soldier had come to visit me on the battlefield. Now, that's just one.
He's probably checking to see if he was dead and he was a Union soldier.
This guy, Jeff, though, who shared his story with me, and Jeff, thank you very much. Don't know if you're going to be listening to the podcast, but I hope you do, and I hope this comes out the way that you would like it presented. But he goes on to say, I've been reenacting for over 42 years and have attended every single Lusty reenactment, never had any experiences like I was seeking, asking him about some, ghost stories. But he says, but I have felt a presence there. Maybe the energy of the men who lost their lives so long ago in this remote wilderness. And he went on to say, at Fort Clinch about 25 years ago, I was doing guard duty, and 15 minutes before we change the guard, we call out post number 1, all is well, and so on until the different posts all finish. I think there were 8 altogether. Number 1 was the entrance to the fort, Sally Port. Number 2 was the guard room just inside the Sally Port. Number 3 was the officer quarters, or maybe the quartermaster, commissary, and the rest were the bansions, of which there are 5. It was upstairs on the deck along the seaward side, maybe it was post 6 or 7. As the post called out all the way to number 8, we knew we would be relieved, usually about 15 minutes later. But one night, there was a pretty good breeze whistling through the fort from the sea. All of a sudden, you could hear a company of men marching along the brick wall as the heel plates clicked along the floor. But what we thought was the relief for the changing of the guard marched off into the distance. I looked at my pocket watch, and it was midnight on the nose. I called over to the next post, who also heard the marching of heel plates, and he too was speechless. A dozen people heard the distinct sound, but never saw a thing. I still get goosebumps recalling the incident, which is absolutely insane.
That is crazy, terrifying, and you're just like, well, it's weird because you think you're coming to get relieved and it's gone. But just the fact that there was actually a noise, I mean, you figure the amount of soldiers that were coming had to be loud enough, to physically create a sound, because it takes a physical anything, even air can make a sound. So just the fact that there was enough of whatever was coming was able to make the sound, and for more than just one person to hear it, I mean, that just tells you that, there's definitely something. I mean, I know a lot of people say they don't believe in ghosts, but I mean, there's a lot of things out there that we don't understand. And that is absolutely mind-boggling to think that multiple people heard that click.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I would love to hear what some of those other guys would have to say about that, because that would be really interesting. I think it'd probably be kind of something similar, but I mean, just the fact that multiple people heard the same thing.
Yeah, now another story from our friend Jeff, who's a part of battleofalusty.org, and you can go on there to check it all out and see when the reenactments are, the schedule of events, and they even have an event poster up there and where the reenactment is going to be taking place. Went on to tell me about another story that happened to his friend who was working on the movie Gettysburg. Now, related to the story of the scene that was being set up, 1,000 reenactors trying to be directed by a dozen production assistants. Now, we all know how that can go in the entertainment business.
Oh, my God.
The scene was where the men were gathered just before Pickett's charge, and the director was talking to the officers of the battalions. The rest of the guys were standing there being quiet, trying to listen as well. Some noises off in the woods about 200 yards away was distracting, so the director asked one of the production assistants to go over there and tell those guys to be quiet. He returned on his little golf cart, white as a ghost, and stated there was no one over there. Everyone was astonished. It was the exact time of day as the original charge was made. So having been on many battlefields, Jeff went on to say, along the East Coast and Western theater there are times when I felt that I have been there before and that I was not alone. Hard to explain. I'm a God-fearing man, but some things cannot be put into words or explained.
That's very well said. Very well said, because you can't. Not everything can.
And that's from our good friend Jeff H. Grichak. who, like I said, was a part of battleofolusty.org. Jeff, thank you very much for sharing those stories with us and enlightening us a little bit on Olusty. You got to check it out, battleofolusty.org. That's OLUSTEE, battleofolusty.org. And man, I had a good time talking about this.
And hey, if you have any news or stories for us, don't forget hashtag OCPB right there on the Facebook page as well.
That's right. Hit us up with your stories. And of course, until next time, join us on Oddcast Podblast online, facebook.com/Oddcastpodblast. On YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our channel. And of course, it's Oddcast Podblast, your fix of the paranormal.